Hi kids, it's Mrs. Pierce. You might remember that we talked about folk tales sometimes came with the characters in threes. And this is a story kind of like the Three Little Pigs, except it's three little javelinas. And javelinas live out in the desert. So here they are. Once upon a time, out in the desert, there were three little javelinas. Javelinas are wild, hairy, and southwestern cousins of pigs. Their heads were hairy, their backs were hairy, and their bony legs all the way down to their hard little hooves were very hairy, but their snouts were soft and pink. One day, the three little javelinas trotted away to seek their fortunes. In this hot, dry land, the sky was almost always blue. Steep purple mountains looked down on the desert where the cactus forests grew. Soon the little javelinas came to a spot where the path divided, and each one went a different way. Now notice that one of the javelinas is a lady. Oh, look at that. The first little javelina wandered lazily along, and he didn't see a dust storm whirling across the desert until it caught him. The whirlwind blew away and left the first little javelina sitting in a heap of tumbleweeds. Brushing himself off, he said, "I'll build a house with them." And in no time at all, he did. What house in the regular Three Little Pigs does that look like? Then along came a coyote. He ran through the desert so quickly and quietly that he was almost invisible. In fact, this was only one of Coyote's magical tricks. He laughed when he saw the tumbleweed house and smelled the javelina inside. A tender, juicy piggy, he thought. The coyote was tired of eating mice and rabbits. He called out sweetly, little pig, let me come in." "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin," shouted the first javelina, who had a lot of hair on his chinny chin chin. "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." And he huffed and he puffed and he blew the little tumbleweed house away. But in all the hullabaloo, the first little javelina escaped and went off looking for his brother and sister. Coyote, who was very sneaky, tiptoed along behind. Is he following him? The second little javelina walked for miles along giant cactus plants called saguaros. They held their ripe red fruit high in the sky, but they made almost no shade, and the little javelina grew hot. Then he came upon a Native American woman who was gathering sticks from inside a dried-up cactus. She planned to use these long sticks called saguaro ribs to knock down the sweet cactus fruit. The second little javelina said, "Please, may I have some of those sticks to build a house?" "Ho," she said, which means yes in the language of the desert people. When he was finished building his house, he lay in the shade. Then his brother arrived, panting from the heat. And the second little javelina moved over and made a place for him. And notice the sign says, "Do not disturb." Pretty soon, way out in the desert, Coyote found the rib house. Do you see him hiding behind the saguaro? He used his magic to make his voice sound just like another javelina. Little pig, let me come in, he called. But the javelinas were suspicious. The second one cried, "No, no, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Bah," thought the coyote, "I'm not going to eat your hair." Then Coyote smiled, showing all his sharp teeth. "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." So he huffed and he puffed, and all the saguaro ribs came tumbling down. But the two little javelinas escaped off into the desert. Still not discouraged, Coyote followed. Sometimes his magic did fail, but he usually came up with another trick. Now the third little javelina trotted along through the palo verde trees. Do you see her under the tree with her umbrella? She saw a snake slithering by, smooth as oil. A hawk floated around and around above her. And then she came to a place where a man was making adobe bricks from mud and straw. The bricks lay on the ground in the hot sun, baking. The third little javelina thought for a moment and said, "May I please have a few adobes to build a house?" "Sí," answered the man, which means yes in Spanish, the brickmaker's language. So the third little javelina built a solid little adobe house, cool in summer, warm in winter. When her brothers found her, she welcomed them in and locked the door behind them. Coyote followed their trail. Well, do you notice she has a fancier house that even has a door in it and a lock? Little pig, let me come in, he called. Now look, he looks pretty beat up. This time, the coyote pretended to be old and weak. Notice he pretended like he didn't have any teeth. And he pretended he had a sore paw, but they weren't fooled. "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin," called the third little javelina. "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in," said the coyote. He grinned, thinking about the wild pig dinner that would come. "Just try it," shouted the third little javelina. So the coyote huffed and puffed, but the adobe bricks did not budge. Again, the coyote tried. Now look at the letters get bigger and bigger. "And I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." But the three little javelinas covered their hairy ears, but nothing happened. The javelinas peeked out the window. Oh no. What do you think that is in the top of the house? The tip of the coyote's raggedy tail whisked right past their noses. He was climbing up on the tin roof. Next, the coyote used his magic to make himself very skinny. Do you see where he is going to come? He doesn't know what's in there. So there he is, very skinny. The stovepipe gasped the third little javelina. Quickly, she lighted a fire inside her wood stove. What a feast it will be, the coyote said to himself. He squeezed into the stovepipe. I think I'll eat them with red-hot chili sauce. Whoosh! Sizzle! Now look they're looking out the window. And do you know who that lady in the picture is? You see, the lady javelina is very fancy with flowers and pictures. Then the three little javelinas heard an amazing noise. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't a cackle. It wasn't a howl. It wasn't a scream. It was all of the sounds together. Yip, 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 yow. And look at all the O's like a coyote does. Away ran a puff of smoke shaped like a coyote. Now this picture is pretty dark because it's a night. And what is the coyote doing? Do you know? The three little javelinas lived happily ever after in the adobe house. And if you ever hear a coyote's voice way out in the desert at night, well, I want to show you this. You know who's making that noise and howling. And there's their little adobe house. And there's the coyote howling at the moon.